completely just skipped. Okay. All right, let's describe the functions, the lobes of the brain that we discussed yesterday in class. Parker, you have a current event for next week, Friday. I'll email him. I'll feel bad. Raven, you want to hit the front light for me? Thank you. Oh, so nice of you to join us. You done? All right, go ahead. All right, do we need another minute? Okay. All right, let's get to it here. So, right behind the forehead is what lobe of the brain? What lobe? Caitlin, go ahead. The frontal lobe, good job. And what's its basic functions? Holy, okay. You got it? What am I holding on to? Okay, all right. So planning, judgments, organization, executive decisions, right? Well, decision making. Good job. And right behind that, like you said, is the motor cortex of the frontal lobe. Good job. And we'll talk about left hemisphere, right hemisphere more next week. Okay, and how that's split by the corpus callosum. Okay, today we'll briefly talk about how the hemispheres, different functions and different purposes of the hemispheres, what they have in store. Good job. All right, so right behind the frontal lobe, we talked about the motor cortex. Again, really just understanding how our motor movements, our fixed movements, okay, and how that's relayed to the rest of the body. Good. And right behind the motor cortex is what? Brittany? All right, good job. The sensory cortex, which is part of the parietal lobe. Good. Sensory cortex, really just basic, your sensory information. Okay, processing that stimulus, processing that sensory information. Parietal lobe, what functions, basic functions does that have? Go ahead, Raven. Sensory information, yeah. So there is forms of reasoning, okay, mathematic, deductive reasoning, that's focused and found in the parietal lobe. Okay, good job. And then back of the brain, what lobe is that? Allison?
Yeah.
Occipital lobe, good job. What's its main function? Yeah, good job. So vision, good work. And then right on the side of the brain is what, Christian? Temporal lobe, good work. And what is that? What's basic functions there? Yeah, good job. So speech, somewhat of vision, and we'll talk today about the Wernicke area, the Broca area, how that is kind of associated with the temporal lobe, with auditory processing. All right, good. And we talked about the cerebellum yesterday or 2 days ago, I think, right? And real quick, cerebellum, what's its main functions? Brady, cerebellum. Okay, all right. So some memories associated with the cerebellum, with posture. Okay, with really our movements. Okay, good job. All right, is there any questions on the cerebral cortex? We'll go with that. All right, so real quick, I have vocab for you. We'll move and talk about the Wernicke area and plasticity, aphasia, and then I'll have you. Well, if we have some time at the end of class, we'll talk about a unique accident that occurred with someone where that railroad spike went right up through his head, and he survived it. But he had different personality, different emotions on certain things and reactions, which I thought was pretty interesting. You guys can check that out then if we have some time. I also want to mention about Veterans Day, since it's very important to talk about. All right, so terms for today. There you go. So yeah, the Broca area, Wernicke area, aphasia, and plasticity. There we go. All right, we good? Yeah, okay. So today, like I said, I want to focus on aphasia. I want to talk about plasticity, the Broca area, the Wernicke area, and when affected, could cause a lot of issues with expressive language, with comprehension, and talk about a unique situation here today with really this accident that occurred on a railroad line and foreign language syndrome, which I think is pretty interesting to think about. So you guys can check that video out on your own. I don't know if I have enough time. We'll see. But aphasia, okay, aphasia is really just some of the issues with expressive language, okay, some of the issues with maybe comprehension. And a lot of that has to do with maybe it's born with, maybe it's these areas with the Wernicke's area, the Broca area weren't fully developed, okay. And those areas we're going to focus about today, mostly associated with the frontal lobe and the temporal lobe. Okay, obviously we know with comprehension, auditory function with the temporal lobe, and with speech, expressive language, that's mostly focused with the frontal lobe and part of the temporal lobe. So aphasia is really just this term that really means just how speech could be impaired and how speech could be altered depending on certain accidents, impacts, or maybe you're just born with it, right? Maybe it's inherent. And it's sometimes unfortunate, obviously, when there's expressive language disorders or maybe some other issues where it's harder to comprehend speech. Some things with people that are born deaf. Okay, there are altercations like a cochlear implant, which will allow some individuals to process language and speech comprehension. And I think it's interesting to note about that with hearing aids obviously helping with some individuals with impaired auditory processing. But aphasia, again, is just this really this altercation, this impairment of hearing and comprehending speech, maybe even expressing speech. So plasticity is just this idea where this term that means our brain will evolve, okay, that it will really just form different connections and abilities to, in some ways, repair itself after damage. Okay, so with plasticity, as we develop over time, we are developing these other performances and other productions in the brain that we can comprehend speech, that we can obviously focus a lot of our attention to certain things, associating memories and emotion with one another, and just really becoming more rational, developing cognitive skills that we might not once had. So plasticity, obviously through developmental stages, through learning, through this nature versus nurture aspect, as this ability as the mind begins to evolve over time and begins to really adapt to whatever we're performing. So again, new tasks that occur, we form neural connections. And these synapses that do occur that connect these synapses these neurons together, allow for more communication to allow us to perform different tasks that we might not have performed before. So again, plasticity is just this experience, this term that means we are just our brains evolving. It's just really becoming through a state where we are forming new connections to perform tasks pretty easy and to understand concepts and rational thinking, critical thinking. It usually occurs through our developmental stages. All right, so is there any questions on aphasia and plasticity? Good at that? Okay. So with aphasia, a lot of the occurrences usually happen with boxing, okay, with heavy impacts to the head. So if you're in an accident with, let's say, concussions or with impacts to the head, let's say football or boxing, a lot of these veteran players that are done with their league, obviously, with their play, go through some of these situations because of the constant bumps to the head, especially to the frontal lobe, the temporal lobe. And again, slurred speech, okay, a lot of times with mispronunciation of words, okay, there's a lot of issues that occur from aphasia through accidents. And the one reading I have for you today, you guys can check that out on your own then. It really just goes to show these impacts to the brain, depending on where it's located or where the impact occurs, this could cause a lot of altercations with speech production, speech expression, and really just our functions. All right, so Broca's area, Wernicke's area. So on your map, on your activity yesterday with the cerebral cortex, you can locate these areas on that if you like. Obviously, that would help you out in understanding where they're located. All right, so with the Broca's area, kind of close to the frontal cortex, the frontal lobe, and obviously the temporal lobe. And that is mostly performed with expressive language. So again, speech, production, okay, how we express ourselves. Wernicke's area is receptive speech, so comprehension. Located in the temporal lobe, we all know that is auditory processing. And it kind of located closer towards the parietal lobe. All right, so real quick, Broca's area, located frontal lobe, like I said, partially in the temporal, involved with expressive language. Damage to this area results in difficulty with spoken language. And that's what I was kind of meaning by many of these football players or boxers or anybody that maybe goes into hard impacts. They might have a troubled time expressing themselves and really forming speech. Wernicke's area is located in the temporal lobe, controls receptive language, so how we comprehend speech. Again, focused mostly in the temporal lobe. We all know that's auditory processing. Still, I mean, a lot of these areas are focused on language and speech production and comprehension. And we still fully don't know the capabilities of the brain. But with some association, a lot of these terms and a lot of these locations formed in the brain were actually found in the mid-90s. Okay, moving up into the, obviously in the modern time, the technology we have today, we can see exactly where these locations are, where expressive language and reception occurs, and they're about spot on still, which is pretty amazing. So damage to the Broca's area, I thought this was unique. This is foreign accent syndrome. I'm sure you maybe heard about it before. Some people just wake up, maybe after an accident that occurs, to really a part of their brain. A lot of this is focused in the left hemisphere, which is really comprehension, speech production, and expressive language. If maybe there was an accident that maybe caused some issues to their Wernicke's area or their Broca's area, some people wake up to maybe speaking some sort of different accent, which is pretty amazing. Pretty obviously, it's rare; it doesn't happen often, but there are some cases where this occurred, where maybe someone in England or United States, they wake up one day, maybe after an accident, some damage to the left hemisphere of the brain, where they speak a foreign language. It's pretty crazy to think about, but it does often happen. Again, very rare, but I think it's something interesting to talk about. I do have a video attached to the lesson today that you guys can check out. It really talks about this foreign accent syndrome and really just how it is a mystery, how this occurs. Just with an impact to the brain, how this could alter someone's speech and their comprehension. So you guys can check that out on your own as well. That's going to be attached to the video lesson for today. All right, real quick, since again, I think it's important to talk about what is today. What is today? Veterans Day. Good job. And we do have an assembly, 5th period about it, but I just kind of want to focus on that. And I'm sure we all know someone that has served in the military, okay, or that is currently serving. I think it's important that we show respect to those individuals because we won't have the freedoms that we have today or do the things we can do without these heroes. And do you know when Veterans Day occurred, when it happened, where it originated? It wasn't always called Veterans Day either. What are the origins of Veterans Day? Do we know? Allie, do you know? Raven? When did it occur?
The end of World
World War One. Good job. All right. Good job. Good job. Good work. So with Veterans Day, it was actually called Armistice Day, the ending of World War One. So you have me American history. We're just talking about World War One right now. And this was signifying the end of the war. Okay. And this was the first global conflict that saw millions of deaths. It was really unprecedented before. So Armistice Day was respected all around the world. Okay. Again, the 11th day, 11th hour, the 11th month. Easy way to remember. And it happened in 1918, the ending of World War One. Later, it will be called Veterans Day President Eisenhower, who was, we all know, Supreme Allied Commander in World War II, he thought we should show respect to those who fought in other wars than just World War One. So obviously after World War II and the Korean War, and when he became president, he made it a point to change it to Veterans Day. And again, I think it's something important that we talk about every year when this day comes up, and just show respect to those veterans and those who are still serving in the armed forces. Today, usually you see it around Memorial Day, but the President of the United States usually hangs a wreath on the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier. But there might be some ceremonies today at the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier because that was when it was first created on Veterans Day back in right around the 1920s after World War I. So you might see some ceremonies online, maybe on social media, of some things going on there on the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier at Arlington National Cemetery. But again, something to remember, something to think about with these veterans. It's very important that we don't forget their heroism. So I'm going to show you guys a video on Veterans Day. Reminder, check out online on the video lesson for today about the foreign accent syndrome. I think that's something important to mention and to look at, since it's still a mystery for many people how this occurs. And tomorrow I have the assignment, I'm going to have the assignment posted. You're just going to create your own superhero of the brain functions, the parts and functions of the brain. So be creative with it. Okay, I just don't want to see like, oh, this is this person. He has this power because of this effect to, let's say, the frontal lobe. Be more descriptive, be creative with it. I think it's a fun activity to get involved in talking about the functions and parts of the brain. So that's what I got for you tomorrow.